Hey, what's up, Internet? I just wanted to get a video out to go over mostly about rogue gearing for Heist, but just also some general tips. It's been the most common questions on my stream lately, and there's a lot to go over, but it's not nearly as complicated as it might look. Rogue gearing is probably the most important aspect of making profit out of Heist right now, especially now that most of the gear affixes are fixed, especially with the last patch that fixed these brooches. And getting all of your rogue gear set up has become much more important. Luckily, they all kind of follow the same pattern. There's sort of like one set of rules for gearing all your rogues. With the brooches, all you're really looking for is this modifier. Heist chests have a 15% chance to duplicate contained currency. This was fixed in the last patch, and it now works, and it's basically, it looks like it's additive to me. So if you have 3 rogues with this, you have a 45% chance to duplicate any currency in the chest. And this also seems to stack additively with Vendari. You can't like roll this and have it duplicate, and then roll Vendari and have it duplicate again. It's just one chance to duplicate any of the currency in the chest. But this is really the only modifier I think you need on your brooch. Anything else is kind of a bonus, right? Job speed, chance to duplicate anything else contained. You can kind of try to match your brooches to like the different rewards in the job types. Like lockpicking has currency and jewelry and fragment chests, so maybe you would want contained fragments or something. It really doesn't matter compared to the currency. Like when you're rolling these brooches, you try to get an 83 level 5 brooch, which is fully a brooch, and just roll it until you get tier 1 currency dupe. Anything else is just a freebie. On the weapons, so the weapons are interesting. You're really looking for buffs that affect you, right? The most impactful of these is probably the auras. So you can get auras like Wrath or Purity of Ice or Fire on the burst bands, like the spell damage ones. On the projectile ones, you can get auras like Haste, which is very good, cast speed and move speed. And on the melee weapons, they're mostly about, for me anyway, stats like life regen. This is probably the least important slot overall, I'd say. You're mainly looking for auras, job speed, and time before lockdown. I wouldn't worry about this slot until these other 3 slots are taken care of, but you can get some nice auras and buffs here. The middle slot is really important, at least for some of the rogues. And what you would really like to have here is +1 to level of all jobs. So the reason for this is that each rogue has their own perk, right? And the power of this perk is directly tied to the rank of their primary job, like whatever they're best at. So if you take this off here, you see he's got a 40% less modifier to alert from opening the large chests. And if we add +1 to all jobs, he has 45, which is a big bonus, right? Now, you can just take +1 to lockpicking. But if you get +1 to all jobs, it'll allow you to take karst in wings that you might not be able to otherwise. And for rogues like karst, Vendari, Nanette, and Talina, these all have the like the best loot perks. Basically less alert and his chance to duplicate. So on these 4 in particular, I would say really try to get +1 to all jobs here so you can take them into more wings. And also increase the strength of their perk, right? Everything else on this one is kind of a bonus. The chance to not generate alert on opening a chest is nice. Job speed is always nice. Increased lockdown time. And reduced fees are okay. But really, as soon as you hit +1 to all jobs for these guys, you can kind of be satisfied with that. Now, it is theoretically possible to get +2. Like, you could roll +1 to all jobs and +1 to, say, lock picking on karst. Those items are so rare, though, and so expensive, they're not really worth considering. It would cost you, especially for guys like Venderi, it would cost you probably a mirror to get one with +2. So as nice as it sounds, it's not going to happen. So with these, you can just roll for +1 to all jobs, and whatever you get on top of that, just consider it a bonus. And with the cloaks, again, everybody kind of wants the same thing. They want a level 5 cloak for the maximum implicit, and then you want the tier 1 reduced raising of alert level from opening chests. This basically just gives you the least amount of alert for opening any kind of chest, and because these all stack together, you want all of your rogues to have these, right? Especially the big players, karst, Nanette, Venderi, Talina. These are the ones you're going to take the most, and sometimes you're going to have to take Tibbs and Niles and Isla. So you do probably want to have it on everybody, but these 4 are the most important to have because you're going to use them more than the others. Now, as far as so Huck and Gianna, you're not really going to take these 2 into grand heists. So if you want, you can kind of put off upgrading their gear. You can see that I didn't even bother rolling a +1 to all jobs for her, because I literally won't ever use her in a grand heist. +1 to deception is just fine because I'm only ever going to use her for actual deception contracts to get reveals. So, and Huck, I don't care because honestly, Huck's just awful, right? He only goes up to 3 naturally, and 2 of his jobs are also jobs where karst and Venderi have higher ranks. I would never take Huck over either of those 2 for anything. Even Tibbs in brute force, he can open 2 more chests after lockdown. So you really just have no reason to gear up Huck, unfortunately. He has no use whatsoever. Everybody else has a pretty decent use. Even Niles, if you have to do a deception wing in a grand heist, there's no reason to take Gianna over Niles, because at least he can open 1 more chest after lockdown starts. And you don't earn, these unlocks, the reveals, you can't earn those in grand heists. Those only come from regular contracts. So there really is no reason to take Gianna over anybody in a grand heist. Isla is one that, so I rolled a +1 to all jobs for her. It's not actually necessary for Isla, even if you use her in a grand heist, because her perk, as you can see here, is 50% increased time before lockdown at rank 5. And it goes up to 55 with +1, which is neat. But as you can see on this very item I rolled, you can also get, +5 seconds to lockdown timer. Well, +5 seconds is way more than 5% increased time, because your base lockdown time is only 20 seconds, right? So 5% is 1 second. Way better to get just regular plus seconds to lockdown timer. If you can get +1 on top of that, sure, why not? But it's really not necessary. For her, you can just be satisfied with lockdown time and job speed pretty much. So that's sort of the base, right? You're mainly looking for currency duplication, +1 to all jobs, and tier 1 alert reduction from opening chests. That's like the TLDR. Once you're done with that, especially on these 4 big ones, you can start gearing out the weapon slots to find good auras and things like that. But the weapon slot's really just not that important. You can get job speed, which is kind of nice. But I wouldn't worry about your weapon slot until these other 3 slots are taken care of. So once you've done that, though, right, you've got your rogues kitted out. And I would say that if you're going to roll that yourself instead of buying it from the trade, because of how much currency is coming out of Heist at this point, it's actually cheaper to roll with Scours and Alks than it is with Alterations and Regals. Alterations don't actually drop very much in contracts or grand heists, especially not out of the large currency chests, which is what most of the high-end people are farming at this point. So just buying Scourings and Alks or using the ones you find yourself tends to be cheaper to roll those rogue pieces. And it's really not that hard to roll Brooches and Cloaks in particular. It can take a while to hit +1 all jobs, so if you're short on currency, you might have to take just like the plus to main job for a while. But these two aren't actually that bad to roll with Scours and Augs. Don't waste your alterations on those, in my opinion. But, so once you've geared them up a little bit, you kind of have to check and see whether you have an Exalt Trinket or not, right? So, if you don't, your first priority should be getting at least a 2% chance for Regal Orbs to drop as Exalted Orbs. That is a super important trinket to have. I think they're under 10x at this point, which is kind of expensive, but it will make itself back relatively quickly as long as you're doing a lot of heists, especially grand heists. Even a 2% won't take that long to pay itself off. And so if you're kind of tight on currency, what I'd recommend, get into a 2% trinket as quickly as you can, and you can make a fair amount of currency just running missions like lockpicking, counter thaumaturgy, and agility. Those 3 jobs have currency chests in them, which you can start to make, use out of your Exalt Trinket. It's also a really good way to farm experience. I leveled to 100 this past week, and most of my experience was actually done in blue contracts. Once you have your rogues geared out like that, even though you can only take 1 rogue, I don't find that the alert level reduction from making them rare really offsets how threatening they can be during the escape. And usually, I don't even want to loot all the side chests, right? Like in lockpicking, I'll often skip the jewelry chests in favor of fragment or currency, as well, just for the opportunity to get more small chests, because those might have currency in them too, right? But they're also just worth a lot of experience after the buffs. And so if you can't afford to get into Grand Heist yet, the marker prices are kind of expensive. I would recommend just either buying bulk contracts or farming contracts for a while, and running your lockpicking, counter thaumaturgy, and your agility missions to try and start making use of your Exalt Trinket. And I want to show how good these things are for experience. In particular, the repository and the tunnels layouts of Heist are really lucrative for experience. And so if you're kind of in that place where you want to farm currency and you want to level and you don't have a huge currency base to start with, this is a pretty good way to sort of start farming and getting a lot of experience on the way. And for some reason, like the reason that this is specific to repository and tunnels is because these map types that have these like these robots, they spawn way more enemies on the exit, right? And this looks like a pretty typical rank 2 lockpicking mission. The amount of experience your rogue is going to earn and that you are going to earn is only tied to the area level, right? So the monster level 83. But the amount of chests that spawn in the map, that is what is tied to the job level. So in a lockpicking 2, we're probably not going to get more than 1 to 3 currency chests. And there we saw, a decent little grip. I'll probably skip the jewelry chests in favor of small chests, just to try and get more opportunities for random currencies. And if you're trying to farm experience while you're doing this, when you get one of these repositories, you kind of want to hang out. As you can see, we got everything other than the jewelry mission or the jewelry chest here. So rolling it rare would have allowed me to only open, a couple jewelry chests, which is probably going to have junk in it anyway. Now, on the exit, however, this is where you can get a lot of experience and kind of do a 2-in-1 here on your heist farming. And this is mostly how I hit level 100, at least towards the very end. So these repositories have these big spawners, right? These little grates on the ground. And once you run enough of these, you'll see these like layout patterns. You've got this this U-shaped room, the square-shaped room, the corners, the vault room, and then the entrance, which is always the same shape. These grates respawn their enemies every time you leave the unit, right? So this, like every time you go through a doorway, so those guys in there are going to respawn now that I've left, right? And so you can kind of go between a couple of rooms here and just kill everything that respawns. This is also true for the reward rooms that you open and looted. It is not true for reward rooms that you just open but don't loot from. If you don't open the reward chest in a side room, the enemies won't respawn in there during the escape. But as you can see, if I just decide I want to go back and forth through here, all these guys are going to respawn. These guys in here have respawned. And so you can just kind of run back and forth through for like 5 minutes or so. What you'll notice is that each spawner, like each one of these grates, there's a certain amount of mobs that they can spawn before the mobs they spawn grant 0 experience. And for me, I would say it took like maybe 4 minutes or so before I hit that threshold. And if you're running the map blue like this, they're not usually going to have any dangerous mods. And this was how I farmed a bunch of experience while still getting a fair amount of currency, because I was just buying lockpicking missions in bulk when doing this. And this gets more lucrative as soon as you can get a 2% Regal to Exalt trinket, right? Because every time you run a new lockpicking, you're going to get new currency chests and more chances for random currency chests out of the small ones. So this is a pretty good way to sort of get started in Heist. If you're not sure how to go about making currency. Once you do this for a while, you should actually build up a decent amount of exalts over time. And you can afford to upgrade to a 3% trinket, right? Also, when you're spamming those lockpicking contracts, or whatever type of contract you decide to buy in bulk, you're going to be getting a lot of markers. And so every once in a while you can stop and see how many markers you wound up earning. And decide to run some basic... You'll find a bunch of blueprints over time. And anything from like 4 to 6 currencies is probably worth running for at least the currency chests. That was another place that I made a bunch of money once I had my 2% trinket. I would say that once you get to that point where you're starting to run grand heists, you probably want to stop and do some deception missions with Gianna to earn her reveals, because it is really expensive to reveal a wing in particular. And more importantly, if we open up like a random blueprint here, so each of these has a price based on the amount of different rooms contained in that wing. This option here, where you can reveal the entire wing, is just never worth. Basically, never click this button. But when you're revealing wings in particular, you always want to try and use Gianna. With +1 job, she has a 45% discount. And part of the reason this is important is because the price of every reveal goes up, like per reveal. So if I just decide to, like, let's click this random chest. This is currently 35.48. Now it's 37.02. And the amount that the reveal cost goes up is just based on the number of reveals you've already done on the blueprint. So you really want to open the wings with Gianna at least. And then you can go use your Niles or your Wakano reveals on the side rooms. If you're trying to save coins, I wouldn't ever open the escape routes. Sometimes they're really handy because they're really close to the display like this. But you can kind of skip those and just open up the rooms that you're interested in. Now, as far as like which rooms I would prioritize, in my experience, obviously currency, once you've got at least a 2% trinket, Harbinger is very good because it can drop ancient orbs, and with the price of exalts as they are, ancient orbs are quite expensive. They're like a third of an exalt. So if you've got your 15% brooches on everybody, you've got a 45% chance at least to duplicate ancient orbs in Harbinger chests. Even more if you get to take Vindari into that wing. Divination cards are pretty solid. Delirium's pretty solid. Surprisingly, Breach is actually pretty good because they have a decent chance to drop different tiers of fully formed Breach stones. And if you're running Betrayal on the side at any point, you'll get a bunch of other base Breach stones that you can then upgrade with It That Fled in research. But even the fully formed, like I've gotten a number of pure Breach stones out of these things, and hitting Chula pure Breach stones is basically free money. They seem to drop a lot. The ones I would avoid, I would say Prophecies are terrible. Weapons, armor. Metamorph is particularly bad because it doesn't drop any of the like monster parts. It just drops Catalyst basically. Essences are terrible, obviously. Don't open those. Accessories are pretty bad in my experience. Gems are pretty bad. Every once in a while you can hit like, a rank 3 in power or enlighten or something. But in general, I don't open those wings. I focus mainly on Blight's actually okay, by the way. But mostly you're looking for currency, Harbinger, div card, Delirium, uniques, and Breach. Uniques are actually surprisingly good because unique side rooms can award any type of unique, including league-specific ones. And if you've got Vindari, you might get 2 of them. That is where we got our Badge of the Brotherhood, which is a 90 exalt item. I didn't, unfortunately, have Vindari in that wing, which would have been nice. But you can also just find a number of other decent uniques, like Soul Takers sell pretty well. I've had pretty good luck with uniques, and they're worth revealing, I think. Other than that, your progression is basically farming until you can get at least a 2% trinket, using missions like lockpicking, counter thaumaturgy, and agility to earn more exalts, to try and upgrade your trinket, and build markers so you can start running decent grand heists and earn your way up to a 4% trinket. Once you're in the higher, bracket of currency, basically, then you can start to consider doing the really expensive stuff. Like on stream, I've been running the fractured, like really expensive blueprints. This is a 17 currency one. We've been making tons of money out of this thing. We got a headhunter from the ancient orbs that we gambled on, that we were just dropping, and we didn't buy any ancient orbs, just the ones that came out of the Harbinger chests over like 20 grand heists. But yeah, heist is extremely lucrative right now, as long as you know how to get started, which really is about gearing your rogues and just getting into heist contracts, and trying to at least get a 2% and then start working on upgrading that to a 3 and then a 4%. Eventually, you're just raking in tons of exalts, and you're balling out of control. It's also a great way to get experience. Yeah, the league has just been turbocharged, in my opinion. So it's as good a time as any if you've got any expensive build plans to look into. As a side note, if you guys are watching and you're already at the point where you're looking to run some of these really expensive ones, I will warn you, they're really expensive. The fractured fossils have hit a price of like 4.5x per, which is crazy. And I think a split beast is around the same. So it will cost you like 4.5 exalts per run. With a 4% trinket, they've proven to still be consistently profitable for me. But we're getting kind of close to that point, especially with the tanking exalt prices, where I don't know how long that's going to continue. But if you're at that point and you need a copy of either the 17 currency room underbelly with thieves trinkets, or the 15 currency with the unusual gems at the end, you can always ping me in game at Wallach and bring a Phenomenal Plagued Arachnid, and we'll get a copy of that split for you so you can fracture your own. If you have any other questions about Heist, on how to make money or just help with a build or something, you can always find me at twitch.tv/WallachTV. I'm still really enjoying this league. I'm probably going to be running these fractured contracts for at least another week. Now that we've got a headhunter and a badge and a lot of currency, we probably need to start thinking about a new build. I just don't know what it is yet. And I'm just kind of enjoying making numbers go up and getting tons of currency. But yeah, you can catch me on stream. If you got any questions, I'll leave a link to the build guide that I use to do all this with in the description. Leave a comment if you got any questions, or hit the forum thread. Anyway, until next time, guys. Peace.